Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Line Change, the NHL betting podcast from the Action Network. My name is Michael Leboff, and joining me right after Florida's win in Game 3 to take a 3-0 stranglehold in their series against the Edmonton Oilers, one win away from the Stanley Cup final of the Florida Panthers, are Nick Martin, Tim Kalinowski, and together the three of us are going to try to make some sense over Game 4 and how to bet it, maybe get out ahead here. The Oilers are minus 120. They were minus 137 ahead of Game 3, so keep that in mind. Florida is an even money underdog. Total here is 5.5. I'll just come out and say it. I don't think that Florida's a bad bet here. I think that what we've seen in the series kind of leads me to believe this is the type of situation where you've got one team forcing the other team to tap out, and it feels like the Oilers are right on the cusp of doing it. That's not how it works in professional sports, but it does seem that way, Nick, and I actually think at even money, Florida's fine.
Yeah, I agree. I thought the Oilers were a little too favored tonight and didn't trust it. I thought numbers wise it looked like whatever. I did kind of think they'd find a way, but I couldn't see how it was minus 135. And I guess that shows why I try to just keep discipline on the numbers, especially come series like this where I just feel like I haven't had a good feel. But for this one, I think it's the Panthers or nothing. I think tonight more than game one, yeah, you could point to some moments that would have had things swing in the Oilers' favor, but all of the Panthers' goals were just complete breakdowns, and it was almost comical watching them get so much out of so little defensive zone or so little offensive zone time. And I'm not even trying to use that as a knock on them, but it just shows. I mean, if you're the Oilers right now, you're not going to spend less time back there than you did. And right now, they just have way too many players on the Oilers blue line that are so susceptible to just these horrible turnovers. So I think a lot of guys on the Oilers can be proud of how they played. I actually think McDavid's played decent in the series. I feel like he's taken a ton of heat. I don't think he's been that bad. They're really, really hounding him, and he's not getting much help from anyone else. I think he's been a lot better than Draisaitl. I think he's been way better than Hyman, Nugent Hopkins, all these other guys. I think he's looked kind of true to form. But it's just showing how much less depth they have, how much more they need to beg out of those guys and all their other issues. So I thought game one could have gone better for the Oilers. I thought they were maybe a little unlucky. I think tonight it was kind of clear that once the script got even, the Panthers were able to just force them into mistakes, while the Panthers themselves are so capable of bending but not breaking. And it feels like they're in a pretty good rhythm of, giving what they want with Bob back there. So I think it's the Panthers or pass. I don't know. It feels like another really ugly one to try to handicap, I think. But at this point, it just seems like the Panthers' defensive edges and their edge and goal are going to keep showing out. I mean, it feels like it's almost an impossibility that the Oilers make this a series, right? I think. But even in game 4 here, it feels like if you're betting a side, you're betting the Panthers.
Yeah, I think you guys are right from that perspective. Personally, I have my, Florida 20-1 to be, I guess, happy about. But at the same time, I bet the Oilers the last 2 games. So part of me is like, yeah, I could really use that to cash right now. And, also too, I gave out the over 5.5 games, and I'm just stunned. Truthfully, I'm floored that this thing, that the Oilers haven't been able to get one, but Florida's just been so good. And I think there's something to be said for Edmonton looking, I guess, a bit out of gas would be like the short way to explain it. But in terms of just even when the big dogs are on the ice, it just feels like a lot of one and done. Like even if it is a good scoring chance, it's not a party around the crease where you're like, oh, how'd that not go in? It's just a lot of, Florida recovers well, even when they make a mistake. So I think for that aspect is just being surprised that the big dogs for the Oilers haven't been able to come through. And I think if I was forced to play it, I'd lean towards the over again, just because I think that with the way that this has gone 3-0, it could get maybe a little silly here, unless the Oilers are just a complete no-show, which hockey players, it's really hard for these guys to have a complete no-show, that doesn't really happen. You know what I mean? So I feel like
I don't think it happens here.
Yeah, I feel like a
Yeah,
similar
I think their
handicap for
big
why I
guys will
like the
show up.
over in game 3, that, like you said. So that's good to hear that you validated that. I don't think they're going to necessarily roll over and just be like, okay, we're going to lose this thing 2-love.
No, I just don't think the Panthers mail it in, right? Like I think they'll
Yeah.
bring they're not the type. I think they'll be all there. The couple will be in the building. I think you can expect them to lock it down. And you talk about the Oilers looking worn out. That top pairing of Ekholm and Bouchard, they look worn out. I feel like they've taken on, like they've played so many minutes this postseason. They've done so well, and they're being asked a lot in this series. They weren't the biggest problem tonight, right? Like CC and Nurse's like breakdowns were still the bigger issues, but it feels like their play is also trending down. So I think it's just there's so much to ask of the kind of guys in the Oilers lineup that are still going well and that pairing, and it just feels like at this point it's kind of clear which roster has more strengths going in its favor.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's not like the you're expecting the Oilers to just wave a white flag, but it just is going to look. I in my mind, projecting this game out, it's going to look like that because of the way that Florida plays. And it looked a little bit like that tonight until the Broberg goal, which was a fluke, goes in, and finally the Oilers got some life. Like they look shell shocked on the bench, all night. And I think as we keep alluding to, like the big problem is that they can't do anything right below their own face-off circles. So like every time an Oilers defenseman has their back to the play to retrieve a puck, it's going to end up being a calamity. I think like I trust Brett Kulak and Philip Broberg the most right now. Those are the guys like I'm like, oh God, got to just get to the next time Kulak steps on the ice. When you're saying that, you're in a bit of trouble. And the Panthers are just like in incredible form. Think about what they're doing right now. They've now won 6 in a row. They beat the Rangers in that game 4, 3-2 in overtime.
And you could call the game 3 before it a half win.
Right, exactly. So like
So,
it's just incredible. So like you think about that, right? Like they've played incredible hockey for what, almost over 3 weeks now, if you want to say. I mean, the Bruins series, they had the hiccup in game 1, and the Bruins played a really good game 5, and the Lightning played an okay series at times. Like Florida's had very little. They just haven't dipped really at all. So to your point, Nick, like I don't think there's any coming back in the series for the Oilers. Like winning one, the way I'm talking about winning one game is like how I would feel talking about a team coming back from like a 3-1 series deficit. I feel like it's that big of a task that we're asking them just to win one game in the series because of how worn out these guys do look. I thought the extra day of rest would help, and that was part of what I was leaning into, playing into like Draisaitl to score a hat trick and that stuff. Like maybe this guy he gets a blow and can find something. He's clearly not right. That when this team, which is so top heavy, is you take away one of their true elite talents, they look completely different. Like you said, Hyman and Nugent Hopkins have looked ordinary. And it's just been bad. So that's why I think the Panthers look all right. In terms of props, though, I do think I'm you know what I might play is like McDavid to lead the game in shots on goal. He does look like he's going, and I think we should see a barrage at the net. He was up around 10-1 before game 3, maybe a little bit longer than that. So that's something I'll be looking at. Again, I'm gonna stop betting Leon Draisaitl. So since I'm doing that, that means you might want to bet
I was
Leon
just going to
Draisaitl.
say, I've got that. Like, I think I'm just going to call it. Goals are hard to come by for the Oil. I think the guys I gave out tonight were decent. Nugent Hopkins hit the post again for the second game in a row.
Has he hit the post? He hit the post in game 1.
I think so. He had some great looks.
Yeah.
And then tonight, I don't know. Bouchard really had the one really good look which was kind of credit to Bobby. He was coming down all day and couldn't pick a spot, but he had 6 on net and a lot of, some. Actually, the one point shot that he shot low blocker was a really good save too. But yeah, I just at this point, and then the other one, this was I was going to get back to, Mike. I put McDavid to have the first shot on goal. They were offering that on FanDuel. I posted that the game before, and I actually looked into it, and I really did think it was a misprice that it was 14-1 the time before. didn't put it up again tonight. And sure enough, when he had the first shot on goal, I had that thought again. So I was with you on that boat. And then the other one, to vent my last frustration, and I don't know if people agree, I've said this to you a lot. I think that Conn Smythe is like a 50-50 debate right now, and it's driving me nuts how the odds are looking, because I think Barkov's had a really good series. He deserves a lot of credit for shutting down the Oilers' top stars. Obviously, Bob's been a huge story. And I think Barkov has 4 points in the series. And entering the series, everyone had him well out in front. So I'm also annoyed on that front. Part of me thinks it should still be a decent bet, but I don't know if I want to actually say that. Like, in my head, I think he deserves it. I think through 3 rounds, everyone had him ranked 1. And I think this round, I mean, first off, it could be their easiest round, right? They might win 4-0. And we're going to sit here and put that much weight on the one round that they win 4-0 when Barkov was still great. Anyways, that's my beef with that. I honestly think his number's kind of too long, but it also feels like at this point, maybe the books have a pretty good no on the way that the vote's going to go. So, yeah, I don't know. That'd be kind of my other thought there.
No, I feel the same way, Nick. Hey, Carter Hutton, when we interviewed him after 2 games, he said that he liked Barkov, like if he had a vote for the Conn Smythe, and that was Bobrovsky's 2 best games. And you're talking from a goalie there, so yeah, Nick, I'm confused because I feel like, again, this is being priced as a 1 round MVP, not a entire playoff. So because I bet McDavid twice to win the Conn Smythe in this series, I'm done with it. But I certainly think it's Barkov's closer than this number. Is this about as, I don't know, last year was interesting. This feels pretty close for who's going to win. Like, I think we're going to be interested to hear whose name gets called, right? Like, we're all going to have our ear to the TV, because I really wouldn't be shocked if it was Barkov. And that price, to me, again, if you weren't tied up in a million things like us over here.
Yeah, that's the thing. I'm not adding myself, obviously. I'm already pissed off the situation and really wanted the Barkov. But it does, like, I think there's just such a strong argument for him when you look at what he's done defensively and what he did in the first 3 rounds. And he's had a hell of a cup final. Like, Bob's been excellent. He was the main reason they won game 1. I don't know. I thought tonight you could argue Barkov was right there with Bob. Maybe not as important, but I don't know. And then in game 2, Bob was solid, but they also gave up absolutely nothing. The Oilers had 1 high danger chance at 5-on-5. So I don't know. Anyways,
Leboff.
Let's see. It's going to be a sweat.
The Oilers look like in tennis when someone's playing like Alcaraz and they maybe got a set off of them or something, but then they're like cramping. You know, it's like,
or like they lose the first set at a tiebreaker.
Yeah,
and yeah, like that's what it does look that way. It's like this. It just looks like one team is gassed. And Sean McDonough like made a good point, or it was him or Ferraro, that if you just dropped into the game and they didn't have the score bug in, if like we held you hostage and then dropped you into that game, this was before the Broberg goal with like 10 minutes left, and we said like try to guess what the score is, you probably would have guessed like 1-1 with the way that the Panthers were playing. Like they just don't let you breathe, and but it's not going well for Edmonton. It doesn't make for the best viewing either, I would say, but hey, who knows? Maybe we get to talk about another game or two. I just wouldn't count on it. The one thing I will note is that the one market I do think that there is still some actually decent betting value in is that the player to lead the series in goals. So right now, Evan Rodrigues is the leader. He's the only one with more than 2 goals. He's got 3, and he is odds on -130 to win in this market. And I think this is playable. Not Rodriguez, but I think there are some numbers here that are playable. Sasha Barkov, who's 2 goals back, and to your point, Nick, like if you think Barkov is, you want some action on Barkov to maybe win the Conn Smythe without even betting it, like I think this is a way in. 15-1 on Barkov. You might be able to catch Rodriguez and catch even like a dead heat. But this is almost counting on this series being wrapped up in 4. If it does extend, which none of us are too thrilled at the notion of, who knows? Like, this thing opens up completely. I don't think it's too crazy to suggest that it's more likely than not that Rodriguez stays on 3, and guys like Sam Reinhart, Carter Verhaeghe, they're both around the same price, 6.5 to 1 on Reinhart, and 7 to 1 on Verhaeghe, and then Barkov 15 to 1. All those guys are only 2 goals back. So, and even McDavid at 30 to 1, I think is quite interesting here, even though he's not got on the board yet, because he could easily score 2, lead the Oilers to a win in Game 4, and all of a sudden this thing is live. So, I would poke around in this market.
Yeah, I think McDavid's kind of a fun sprinkle there. I could see him breaking through. Maybe the Oilers win Game 4. I think if they win Game 4, obviously you see him have a good night. Then you could have a decent little ticket there.
So that's your way in on the Oilers, essentially, right? Like,
yeah, I mean, honestly,
it's a reach. Like, I think this is I've had a miserable time on this series. I think Game 4 is tough, but I think that's a fun one if you think they're going to win 1. Even if you get to 2, even if you think they'll win this Game 4, I think that's not the worst shot, right? Because I think at this point, it's going to be McDavid. Although that 4th line was great tonight. The one positive for the Oilers was they had that line going. But
you want to get it on Warren Fogle at 110 to 1.
And also, too, like, right, you take a shot like this and you get to either say, F this, we'll see you next October, or okay,
right.
we'll see you, it'll be Saturday to Tuesday. Let's keep it rolling.
Yeah, I mean, the thrill of this final has gone out the window quick. This has made me miss our Tuesday full slate ones. The rest of the playoffs were great, so
I need the Ottawa Senators so bad.
Yeah, right.
I know.
Yeah, what would you give to be betting the Columbus Blue Jackets at plus 210 against the Colorado Avalanche?
Talking about Ottawa,
talking about Chinikov and Marchenko, like, oh, those guys, man, they're cooking right now.
Speaking of those guys, I watched the AHL Game 7 last night, and it was really good. So might have some plays on the final, because that series the last one was good, and I think this final will be good. So probably not going to interest a lot of people, but we'll see. Maybe those will get sprinkled into the Saturday episode.
Don't think head of podcast Matt Mitchell's going to approve line change for that.
Well, we're reaching, Matt. We need to get
it's
more than
like I
just
said,
the Panthers money line.
We need Ottawa on a 4-game skid that's lost every game 7-6, and they're playing. They're playing Colorado.
Maybe the Senate. Can we just get the Senators to show up for Game 4 at the very least? Can they just be in the building? All right. Before we get out of here, if you can conjure up a best bet, I don't care if we repeat each other for this exercise here, because there's very little to choose from, obviously. Tim, if you had a best bet for Game 4.
Over. I'll go over 5.5.
Nick?
I'm going to go with the Panthers plus 106 right now.
Yeah, I'm right there with
it's
you.
It's hard to see how it's anything but even minus 110. So,
okay. Perfect. So that's it. Even if this is the last game, I do think we're gonna be back for at least a draft episode. Hopefully, an episode to look ahead at maybe the first look at the big board for the next season. So you will hear from us at least once more here on Line Change. Best of luck. Hopefully, I know Tim's got the 20 to 1 on the Panthers, and I'm sure a lot of people we were talking about this team quite a while back. Hopefully, you guys jumped in. But personally, like I do want to see a couple more games. So, good luck to you all out there betting Game 4. Good luck to the Oilers, hopefully extending the series, and we'll see you next time.